Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. I am back. Gonna be back. So it is about 6 p.m. Eastern time here on Thursday, which for most of the casual college basketball crowd, oh, it's the Sweet 16. We got Arizona Clemson. We got UConn, San Diego State. So much going on in the world of basketball. But while the Sweet 16 takes the mainstream center stage, the counter to that is that for all but 16 teams, you know what has really begun? Roster building for 2024-2025 season has officially begun. The portal's been open for a week and a half. It is insane. Everybody's trying to upgrade their roster, and we got a very interesting piece of high school basketball news on Thursday morning. That is because Bryson Tucker, one of the top uncommitted players in all of high school basketball, class of 2024, 6'6" wing, five-star kid, McDonald's All-American. He had not made his college decision. We'll explain why in a minute, but that was until Thursday morning when he did, in fact, commit to a college. That school, oh, you already know, drum roll, please. It was the Indiana Hoosiers and my guy, Mike effing Woodson. So how about Indiana picking up? Listen, I think this is a very talented player. I think it is a very important piece, not a perfect piece, not a perfect program, but you talk about a roster that needs major pieces for 2024, 2025. Let's give my guy, Mike Woodson, credit for getting this kid. First of all, in terms of the player, listen, I've seen him a little bit. I'm not a recruiting guru. I'm not on the road 365 days a year. But from what I've seen, you can see the talent oozing out of this kid. Very interesting story, by the way. As I mentioned, he was uncommitted as of this week. And the reason being is that he was a kid that, for all intents and purposes, it felt like during his entire high school recruitment that he would end up with G League Ignite. That was, of course, that professional pathway from high school to the NBA, kind of that gap year program that the NBA put in place. Then, as I told you was going to happen when it first came out about 4 or 5 years ago, it fell apart over the last couple of weeks, and it's nobody's fault, but NIL played a role. But the bottom line is G League Ignite is no more. And so because of it, Bryson Tucker, I think he was set to go to play for G League Ignite and instead now had to look at college options. This was a kid that visited Kansas, had an offer from Kansas, obviously. There was Louisville interest. So you could criticize Kenny Payne, the former staff, but the bottom line remains is that this was a very highly sought after player, and now he is an Indiana Hoosier. In terms of his game, listen, we all know by now our guy Mike Woodson has a type. 6'6", super athletic. To his credit, he competes on both ends of the floor. Certainly think he has NBA upside, plays really hard, great finisher at the rim, all of those intangibles that you want in an elite high-level athlete out of high school basketball. Now, he's not a perfect prospect. I think there's two things that certainly stand out. One, he is a very skinny kid, which, by the way, a lot of kids are. That's why you have a college weight program. That's why you pay your strength and conditioning coach a bunch of money. Think about all these guys that have come into college over the last couple years and how quickly they can put on weight if it's the right weight in the right program. Think about a guy like Rob Dillingham at Kentucky this last offseason. I think he added about 20 to 25 pounds of pure muscle on a skinny frame. And I'm not an expert on how to, I'm an expert on how to add weight, but not the good kind of weight. But I bring it up because he's the kind of kid that I think will be able to put on weight, and I think he will be able to compete in the Big Ten next year. Now, the other thing with Bryson Tucker, and Indiana fans know it, and I saw some backlash, some criticism, some this, some that about this commitment. He is not, at least in this point in his career, a great three-point shooter. Now, that is a big issue because Indiana, as everybody knows, they were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in college basketball last year, certainly one of the worst three-point shooting teams in power conference basketball last year. And that's an issue, and it absolutely needs to be addressed, and you would hope that with the other pieces in the portal and the other pieces that Mike Woodson adds this offseason, that is something that gets addressed. But I'm also not going to sit here and say because he's not a 43% three-point shooter that he isn't a great prospect and that he can't be really good at Indiana. And let me say this about Mike Woodson, right? Because I think there are two things that stand out with this commitment that if you want to focus on the negative only that he can't shoot, that's fine. But we also have to focus on two positives, which in my opinion are very important when it comes to this commitment. The first one, and this is important. Listen, let me give Mike Woodson credit for this. Because if you've been with me from the beginning of this Mike Woodson journey, I'm the guy, the day he was hired, I criticized the hire. I said it wasn't going to work. I think I called Indiana a football school. I said, it's not going to work. But the reason I didn't love the hire was because I did not believe that Mike Woodson would be able to compete at the highest level in recruiting. Because remember, he came in 2021 right as the landscape was totally changing. NIL was in its infancy. We knew we were set to have the one-time transfer rule, and I always believed the one-time transfer rule was ultimately going to be the unlimited transfer rule. And so at the time I said, you're going to bring in a guy who's been out of college basketball for 40 years. Sorry, don't love it. Well, the one thing, Mike Woodson, you can't deny, it's a credit to him. He has brought in a caliber of player that bluntly Indiana hasn't had in a while. I mean, think about this. McDonald's All-American this offseason in Bryson Tucker. McDonald's All-American 2 years ago, or last year in Mackenzie Mbako. McDonald's All-American the year before in Jalen Hood-Schifino. The guys out of the portal. Kalel Ware has been a star. Xavier Johnson, I know he got a lot of criticism, whatever. I thought he was, for the most part, a pretty good college point guard. What was it, the 2022 Big Ten tournament? They don't get to the NCAA tournament if it isn't for Xavier Johnson. So I think he's been good in the portal. I think he's been good in the high school ranks. And let me take it a step further, and this is why I'm not as concerned with Bryson Tucker as others are in terms of the three-point shooting. He has been able, Mike Woodson, to get the most out of some of his most high-profile players that people had questions about. Remember, Kalel Ware, you can go back in my own archives, and we talked about when Kalel Ware committed last year out of the portal from Oregon. And what did we say at the time? Really talented player, but does he have the motor? Can he get that kick in the butt? Well, credit to Mike Woodson, because Kalel Ware, I don't want to sit there and say it was like last chance saloon for him, last chance you at Indiana, but he had a reputation out of high school. He had a reputation out of Oregon, and he largely changed that reputation this year. This was a guy that was awesome at Indiana this year. 16 points, 9 boards per game, about 2 blocks per game as well, and the three-point shooting was really good. He was a guy that, I'll just be honest, before Mike Woodson was deemed to be, does he have a motor? Is he lazy? I hate to put that term on any 18-year-old kid, but that was the reputation. And so Mike Woodson very clearly got the most out of him. Credit to Mike Woodson for that. By the way, Jalen Hood-Schifino, nobody thought he was a one and done when he got to Indiana, was awesome. Still remember the night he went for what, like 34 against Purdue a few years ago in Mackey Arena? So obviously, he is a player that Mike Woodson got more out of than people thought. And I'll even take it a step further. Trace Jackson-Davis was a really good college basketball player before Mike Woodson ever got his hands on him. I'm not gonna take away from what Archie Miller did to get him on campus. I'm not going to take away from what Trace Jackson-Davis did when he got on campus. But what also can't be denied, Mike Woodson put him in the position to be a great college basketball player, an Indiana icon, and now a very good NBA player. Now, I don't watch a ton of NBA regular season. There's only so many hours of the day. I got a family. I got a dog. I can't be watching everything. But from what I hear, Trace Jackson-Davis has really impressed the folks in Golden State with his play as a rookie. So those are 3 guys in 3 years that Mike Woodson has elevated. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bryson Tucker, is the next one. Now, I do think, and it's worth noting, right, is that the question now becomes who surrounds him on this roster. Good news is you got some really nice pieces. Malik Renew obviously just announced, a day or 2 ago that he's coming back. Really good player to build around. Again, I know he's not a three-point shooter. I get it. But whenever you can bring back a third-year junior, 15.6 boards per game in the Big Ten, that is a great piece to build around. Lefty gets buckets. He's going to be one of, if not the most experienced veteran Big Ten guys in the post going into next year. Zach Edey's gone. Some of these other guys are graduating. Obviously, Illinois is losing all their guys, Coleman Hawkins, etc. Malik Renew has a chance to be a special player for Indiana next year. Trey Galloway is returning. Now, Trey Galloway's got to work on that three-point shot because this was a guy that obviously throughout his career was a much more consistent three-point shooter, at least during his junior season 2 years ago. And then for whatever reason, it just didn't click this year. Now, part of it was Xavier Johnson was hurt. There wasn't a true point guard for a lot of the season. So I think that played a role as well. But Trey Galloway's back. Anthony Leal's back. And now you got Bryson Tucker. That's not a bad place to start if you're Indiana. Now, again, you have to you got to make moves in the portal. And we know you need spacing, three-point shooting. You need a point guard to replace Xavier Johnson. So I'm not going to sit here and make any bold predictions, bold promises going into next year. But what I will say, I like that core four that I just said. Renew, Bryson Tucker, Anthony Leal, Trey Galloway. Now it's on Mike Woodson to do work. April is, as Will Wade said on this podcast a few weeks ago, it is now the most important month of the year for the present and future of your program. It used to be high school recruiting in April, May, June, July. Now it is April and the portal, and it's time for Mike Woodson to get to work. But if you are looking for the 2024-2025 roster, this is a great first piece. Credit to Mike Woodson, and we will see where he goes from here. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. If you're watching this on Thursday, we will have a live reaction show to the NCAA tournament Sweet 16 games this evening. Make sure to subscribe, turn on the notifications. We appreciate